everybody, how's it going? So we're going to continue on with more static methods here for the observable, and we're going to have a part 2 that continues on from the previous video. And the reason for that is we're going to cover off the rest of the static methods to the left. Well, not all of them. Basically, there'll be about 5 left that we haven't covered. But a lot of them are just to do with either testing, or there's one pertaining WebSockets, and another one pertaining Node. As I said, I will leave a link in the description of the rest of, or basically all the methods that are on the observable object in the description, and you guys can see for yourselves which ones are left out. But for the most part, I'm going to cover most of them in this video. So what I've done is I've created a new project from scratch, and the reason why I wanted to do that is I wanted to keep these things a little separate. So I've created a new project. The repo I will leave in the description. You can clone that down. I've started it up using Angular CLI. I've added some initial content, which you can see over in the component here. It's just some HTML. And in the component itself, I've just added the onInit interface and implemented that. And then I've also added the 2 product methods I had in the previous video. And that's all I've done at this point. So I want to get started now on the new functions that we want to look at. And the first one we'll look at is called bind callback. Now what bind callback actually does is it allows you to add a function to as a parameter that function must have a callback as its last parameter in that call. And what actually happens is the result of the observable will be the result of that callback function once you actually call it. The best way is to actually show an example of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to basically import in the things we need first. So import observable from rxjs/observable, and we'll also import the method I want to use, which is rxjs/add/observable/bind callback. This is the first one I'm going to work with, and then I'm going to define an observable here. So we go var obs callback equals observable dot bind callback, and this takes basically a function where the callback will define the result that's returned from it. Okay, so just to give you an idea of the function definition that we need, I'm just going to derive an example here. I'm going to create another private method here, and then go a bind callback function, and just for namesake I'm just going to add a number here as a parameter. Now the last parameter, as I just said, has to be a callback, so I'll just go callback and I put it as type function, right? And this method basically needs to invoke this callback just like it would in things like jQuery. When you think of $.getJSON, you'll have the URL that you want to call out to get your JSON feed, and then you'll have a callback function where the data is returned. Similar thing here, except that we don't see the actual implementation of getJSON. We just know that getJSON is going to eventually call our callback with the correct data. However, the problem is that those kinds of functions don't work well with tests. So what this bind callback does is it allows you to create an observable around this, so that when you call it, you will get back some data, but it'll be in the form of an observable until you subscribe to it, to which you can get the actual real data back from the callback. I'll go through this very slowly. It's a little confusing the first time when we do this, but basically in here I'm just going to log out something. I'm going to go console.log, and I'm just going to put this method was called, right? just to show you that it actually gets called. And then we're going to call the callback that we have passed in, and I'm just gonna send back a number. Okay, so ideally, this function now should have a function that returns an integer, or a number in this case. Okay, actually there is no integer in JavaScript; they're just numbers. So now that we've got a function that has a definition with a callback in it, we can basically pass this function name in as a parameter. So you go this dot function name. Right, at this point, this is actually an observable of type. It's really an observable of type T, where T is a number and some function we don't know about. Okay, but what we really want is we want to get the result of the callback that's been called, and we can't do that until we actually invoke the function or the callback function. Now, invoke the callback function. Basically, we call this wrapper observable here, and we get the result. So we go var result equals obs callback, and we pass in a random number. I'll just say 2, right? And so this result now is an observable of type whatever the callback is, right? So ideally, what's going to happen at the end is we're going to get the result of the callback once we subscribe to this. Okay, so let's do that. Firstly, I'm going to create a new property up here, just like we did in the other ones, where we add the property and then we'll add the markup to the front end. So I'm going to call this bind callback property. It's a type of string, and we'll initialize it to blank. Okay. And now that we've got the result, I'm going to go results.subscribe, and we've got the value of the result, and then we'll go this dot, and we're going to basically, it's only one result, so we'll just go change value of property, this dot bind callback property, and value dot toString. Okay. Now the other bit I forgot to do is I really need to assign bind and callback property equals this dot change. Right. So hopefully when we do the front end now, so if I come over here and I'll come in and I'll do that H4 like we did in the previous video, and we'll go what's the name of this method again? It's called binding callback. Binding callback method H4 P, and then the name of the property, bind callback property. Now if I go and save this, ideally what we should get is a log that says a bind callback function was called, and then once we've done that, the number that we passed in originally here should be spit out on the screen. So let's take a look at that, and we can see the number out on the screen here, and in the console we can see a binding callback function was called. Okay. So that's just a way of handling methods that have callbacks and returning them as observables that you can inspect at a later date. Okay, that's the first one that can be handy. The next one I want to look at is called combine latest. And what combine latest will do for us is it will take one or more observables, or sorry, it has to take at least two, two observables or more, and we can do basically we can return information based on the two values that are in those two observables, if that makes any sense. Anyway, let's quickly just have a look at this. First, I'm going to come in here. I'm actually going to set this up first, and we'll put what do I want to call this? We'll call this combine latest, sorry. combine latest method, and we'll go combine latest here. And then over here, we'll go in and go combine latest string equals this. And similar to this, and I might push that down further, but underneath this, I'm going to go var combine the obs combine latest. And we'll get back to this in a second, because in order for this to work, we need to actually define two types of observables. So I'm going to go obs1, for example, equals observable of 1, 2, 3, and var obs2 equals observable dot of, let's say, 4, 5, 6. Oops. And the one thing we need to do now is we need to include that of. And we did have of in the previous video, so you should know this one. And the other one we want is combine latest, except with the lowercase c, because everything is special casing. So now we come down here, we can go equals observable dot combine latest, and I'm going to grab those two observables there. So I go obs1, obs2, and then this final function here, what you can do is you can take one value from obs1, one value from obs2 that happens to be in the same position, and you can basically return a stream where you can calculate or create a calculation that changes the end result of those two together. And so basically you go A, B, these are just random letters, you can put whatever you want, but A will be the first result from obs1, B will be the first result from obs2, and then we'll come in and we just basically do a calculation of some sort. So we can go A plus B, for example. Right? And in fact, I made a mistake here. And what am I missing? I'm just trying to work out what I'm missing here. Do I need that? No. It was that last parenthesis. I don't actually need it. So what's going to happen here is we're going to have the first value from each observable, which for obs1 is 1 and obs2 is 4. It's going to add those two together, so we'll get 5, and that will be the first result of the stream. And then it will come in again, it will grab the second value from obs1, which is 2, and then it will grab the second value from obs2, which is 5. It will add those two together, and you'll get 7, so it'll be 5, 7, and then the last one is 9. Okay, and that's what's going to happen. Now, I just need to subscribe to this. So we're going to come down to the bottom here, and that should have a semicolon at the end. And we're going to go obs combine latest, right? Dot subscribe value, and we'll go this dot combine latest property equals this dot. And remember, these are more than one value, so I'm going to put append. This dot combine latest property and value dot toString. Right. So as a result of this, now we should get the values I said before, 5, 5, 7, 9 for the combined latest method, and that's 7, 8, 9. Interesting. 7, 8, 9. Okay. 1 plus 1 plus. Alright guys, I'm gonna quickly work out what I've done here. I'm surprised with the numbers. Just 1 second. And I'm back. Sorry guys. Just a little misunderstanding from me there. I honestly thought it was going to be each value plus together. What actually happens, in fact, is that the latest value of obs1, which happens to be 3, is the only thing included as part of the operations for these 3 numbers, because this is the second this is passed in. So it goes 3 plus 4, which is 7, 3 plus 5, which is 8, and 3 plus 6 is 9. That's where you get the 7, 8, 9 from. So in this case, the 1 and the 2 make no difference. If I come in and I remove the 3, it'll now be 2 plus 4, 2 plus 5, and 2 plus 6. So it'll be 6, 7, 8. Okay, so let's check that out. Let this refresh. And for whatever reason, it's still 7, 8, 9. Why is that? Oh, there it is, 6, 7, 8. I don't know what happened before, but now it's working as intended. And ultimately, if I come here and I remove this down to a 1, you'll get 5, 6, 7. Okay? So that's combined latest. And so that's something you may use from time to time. I personally have never used this method at all for anything. So yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about it at this stage. Now this next one, what I might do is I'm going to combine 2 of them together in the one call and explain what they both do, okay? So the first one we're going to look at is defer, and the second one we're going to look at is empty. And in fact, yeah, let's do that. This is different from the GitHub repository, where empty is treated a little differently. And in fact, maybe I should just leave it as is and explain it the way I've done it. In fact, I will not use empty in this example. I'll just continue to use defer like I have in my GitHub repository. So defer is basically, it allows you to specify an observable or a new observable every time someone tries to subscribe to that method. Okay, so just say you go observable.defer and you set that to one parameter, and then you go observable.defer again. They're 2 different things. Okay, now what defer has is allows you to specify a function. So the function which will act as the observable or the result, the resultant observable. You can actually return more than one observable inside that function, which is why it's pretty much used for deferral. Anyway, I'll show you the example of that. So coming back over to the code, just under here, I'm going to go var obs defer equals observable dot defer. Now I'm going to include that up here again. Sometimes I forget to do this. Defer, and then inside of here we can do a function, and this function has to return an observable. Okay, so the options we've got is, well, we can either pass obs1 or we can pass an obs2, obs3, which I haven't defined yet. So I'll go obs3 equals observable dot of, and I'm going to make it names here. So I'll just go Daryl, John, Duckmanton. That happens to be my full name. And so for defer, what I might do is I'm going to do a math calculation here. So I'm going to go if, and I'll explain all of this later if you don't know it, but this is just simple JavaScript here. If you've written JavaScript, you'll know something like this. Basically, if I'm saying if mat.random is over 50%, we're going to return obs1, or instance of obs1. Otherwise, we'll return obs3. So one will return a set of numbers, the other one will return a set of strings. Okay. Now I'm getting an error here. Why am I getting an error? Because I need to specify the type, to which I have any here, because it can either be a number, this is an observable number, or it can be of string. Okay, so it's telling us that we need to specify because they're two different data types. So it can't infer it, so it's asking me specifically, well, what type do you really want here? And so I had to put any. So we've got that. Now we're just going to have to come down and call it. Alright, so we'll do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually call it 4 times. So for that, I'm going to create a set of properties up here. That will be defer one property of type string equals la, and I'll do this 3 more times just to show you there's a little bit of randomness to this deferral. So now we'll come down, and underneath the obs combine, we're going to have something very similar to this. So we'll copy that, and we'll paste 4 times. Right, we'll come back up to obs defer, and we're going to obviously subscribe to these 4 times. And then we'll grab defer one property, and we'll change these. And now I need to change them to individual numbers. So this one will be 2. This one's 3. And this one is 4. And we'll paste that over here. Whoops. And we'll grab this one, and we'll place that over here, and this one, and place that over here. Okay. So what this should do is, because we've subscribed to it 4 times, there is a chance that at least one of these is going to be either above or below 0.5. So we should see some numbers get outputted, and then occasionally probably some words, you know, or my name essentially, as an array. So the last thing I need to do is I need to come over here, and we're going to copy this and paste, and we'll just go defer method, and then we'll grab the defer one property, and basically what I want to label inside of here is each individual name and what it is. So I'll go defer output 1 that, and then we'll add a BR at the end just to be so they're not all on one line looking weird. I'll get rid of the last BR because we don't need it. So we go 2, 3, oops. 3, and we'll just change this to 2, 3, and 4. Save, come over, and now you can see here the outputs are either my full name or the number 1, and that's because the 1 here is still on its own. I'll put 1, 2, 3 just to make it look a little better. And you can see on 3 occasions it spat out my name, and on the 4th occasion it spat out 3 numbers. Okay, and that's just the luck of the draw with the defer and the math.random part. But that's just give you an idea that each time we subscribe, we get something different. It allows us to get something different. And that's something to keep in mind if you want to be able to have a function that always spits out a different observable and doesn't just link up with the same observable. You can do that as long as that function returns an observable. So the next one we want to look at is one that's pretty straightforward. And I was going to use it as part of the deferral, but then I realized that there's a little bit more to it than what I first thought. And that's the empty observable. So var obs empty equals observable dot empty. And you're like, what the hell would I use an empty for? Like, what does it do? Is it just empty? Well, basically what the empty observable does is it just sends a complete status. Now, empty is really only used in situations where you may not want to do any processing at all. But you want to be able to have it return observable all the time. Now, it could be, if the person is over the age of 35, calculate, how much their health insurance is going to cost. Otherwise, don't do anything, all right? So if you're not over the age of 35 and you're under it, then we're not going to calculate anything. So as a result, we're just going to return an empty task for you to do. So once you subscribe to it, nothing really happens. Okay. If you've written your code properly, you've handled cases where you might get nothing back from an observable, and that's essentially what it is. So what it does is it doesn't allow you, or it doesn't actually send a next call, this is what the first parameter to subscribe handles, is a call to next on the subscription. And I'll mention more about how this works in a future video. But basically, for an observable will get the subscriber and you'll call three things. You'll either call next, if it's able to obtain a value, error if it's thrown an error, or complete if everything is done. Okay, so once the function is finished processing and the observable is deemed complete, they can call complete on the subscriber, and that's what gets sent. Now, that's essentially what this observable empty does. It just returns, or it just invokes a complete on the subscriber. So to show that, let's do this. So once again, I'll copy. And I'll come down here. Now for the first one, I'm just going to put in here instead of all this gunk, because it's not going to mean anything. I'm just going to go console.log. Well, actually, no. I'll go this.empty. Empty. What do we want to call it? Empty property, I guess. What, empty property? So this dot empty property equals this should never be populating, because we should never be trying to call the next value on an empty. And in fact, I've got obs defer here, which is incorrect. Let's grab the obs empty this time and make sure that's the front. And then the second parameter to subscribe is the error function, so I'm going to put null because we're not going to deal with it here. And then the last one is a function for success, to which we are going to do something. We're going to this dot empty property plus. We'll put plus equals just to ensure that if it is setting this, then we should see it if we increment it or append it. Sorry. But by rights, it shouldn't append anything. It should just start anew, and we'll say complete was called. Right. So if the value is to be called on the empty property, it would say this should never be populating, and then after that, it would say complete was called. But because it's empty and we got nothing to process, it should go straight to complete was called. And that's it. Okay. So the only thing we got left to do on this one is add the stuff. So let's come in here. We'll just grab this one because this one's more accurate to what we want. And it's the empty method. And it's the empty property. Right. Come in. And you can see empty method complete was called. Okay. Complete was called. Not value. Value was not called. Only complete was. And that's the point of empty, is to basically return something that doesn't actually process anything. It just says, oh yeah, no, complete. So don't bother doing anything. And complete is really just to signal that something's done. So next one, the Fromm method. So the Fromm method can take a few things. It can take an array, which is what I'm going to show you. But it can also take things like promises and promises. I think that's the other one I think it can take. But I'm not really going to use the from for promises, and there's a reason for that. And you'll see in about a minute, or in a few minutes, I should say, why I'll not bother using that. So come back over to the code, and once again, have I put empty? Yeah. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to import another one. It's called Fromm, like this. And then down here, under the empty, I'm just going to go var obs from equals observable dot from, and I'm going to pass in some array of numbers, like this. Right. And then we'll subscribe to that array, to that observable that handles that array, or that from method that handles that array. And what from really does is it looks at what it's got and it tries to flatten out what's in there. So for this example, we've got an array, so it's not going to print out a box with like 7 elements in it. It's going to print out, well, not 7, was it? 6? 6 elements in it. It's going to print out 6 elements. That's essentially what's going to happen here. Okay, and it's from an array. So you put in the values individually. With this one, you put in some form of an array, and that converts it to a string. So let's come down to underneath here, and we'll change it from obs defer to obs from, and we'll add a from property up here. There's a lot of copying and pasting this one as well. From property. And we'll come here and we'll go from property equals append value to property from property. And this should be enough to see what I'm talking about. In fact, I haven't included the data on the front end here. From save. And you can see here, now that we've actually returned, we got the number individually spaced out. Okay, it's not an array at this point anymore. It's a stream of data, and we're looking at the value one at a time. Now, if I didn't use from and I used of and I passed it in an array, it would have basically printed out all of these with commas between them because they're all part of the same array. But now that we've used from, we've converted that array into a stream of individual items to which we then we've printed out each one. Okay? So when it gets through here, or to this point, this subscription is called 7 times, or how many times there are, 6 times. It's called 6 times, passing in the value for each time, and then it does what it normally does. Okay? Nothing different there. Next one is from event. So from event can be handy if you want to look at keyboard events or mouse events or those kinds of things that are in your on your website. You might want to monitor a button click from a specific location for whatever reason. Just keeping in mind that this should be kept to a minimum, simply because we should be trying to use model binding as much as possible, or any other kind of strategy that we've already spoken about. But to be complete, let's have a look at how that works. All right, we'll have a look at how that works in a sec. So, first things first, let's put the Fromm event here. And we need to put a Fromm event up here. var obs Fromm event equals observable dot Fromm event. Now I'll come back to this in a minute for the parameters, but I want to come up here and import that too. Right, Fromm event, it's that kind of casing, and now it should complain because I haven't added the numbers yet or the thing in yet. So I want to basically add a listener. This is almost like adding a listener to your web page. So adding a listener, I'm going to add it to the document. So the document is your normal Windows document. Your web page document. This is nothing special here. And what I want to handle is I want to handle the click. So if anyone clicks anywhere on the document, it's going to be registered as a stream item from this Fromm event call, which will be passed through as an observable to my obs.from event, right? So the obs.from event, I don't want to do all this stuff straight out. We need to do more. We can keep the value, but inside of this array bit, this handler part, this part here, we need to do just a little bit more to see the right information that we want to see. So the first thing I'm going to do is go let mouse event equals value as mouse event. That's the first part, right? And if we don't have a mouse event, or if we do have a mouse event, we're going to do something. Whereas if we don't, we're not going to do anything. Okay, we're just going to let that flow by. And it should never flow by because we know that we're tracking this to a click event, which is a mouse event. Okay. So now what we want to do is I want to basically write a message that tells us where we've clicked on the screen. So both X and Y components of where we're clicking as a message. Okay. So let's do that. So next thing I'm going to go is let mouse location text, and let in TypeScript is basically like a constant. We can't change it. And if you understand, if you went through my Swift videos, you would have found out that in Swift it's the same deal. Let is also like defining a constant in line, saying, oh, I want to set a new variable, but I don't want anyone to change it after I've set it. So that's what this is. Anyway, moving on. So I'm going to put here, you are clicking at, and I'll put like this, and then I'll put dollar. In fact, this should have the little tildes. I always forget the tildes. It's a new thing. And then we'll come in, I'll go dollar like that, and another dollar. And inside of here, I go mouse event dot client X and mouse event dot client Y. So this gets to basically the X and Y position in the document, or the client, basically the position of the client's mouse within the document. That's essentially what that line's there is doing. And then basically instead of passing for the from property, which we're going to have from event property, we're going to append. We're not going to append, we're going to change the value each time. And we're going to change it to whatever is in here. This mouse location text. Now we haven't created this property yet, so let's go do that. It's very similar, this one. Like so hopefully, if I go and add the front end part, so we'll come in here. We go from event method, and we go from event property. Whoops. So if I now come over to the app, and I let it recycle or refresh. If I come down to where it says from event, yeah, we've got nothing underneath it so far because I haven't clicked anywhere. If I click here, it now gives a location. You are clicking at 867 by 536. If I click a little higher, then the numbers should go a little lower, at least in the Y axis. Like if I click all the way over here, it's still going to be 928, but you can see it's 101 now. And it comes down to 20, and then basically as I get closer to the bar, there's 0. There you go, there's 0 there. And if we go all the way across, we got 43, and it gets really hard once you get down near 0 to actually get it. 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0. Yeah, so anyway, that's how you can capture information from the screen. In this case, I just happen to capture a mouse event, but you can capture like input text events, all kinds of stuff. And you're probably more likely to do this if you got a directive and you want to monitor something that somebody's doing on an input field rather than just doing model binding or something like that. You want to monitor, if they're trying to put in letters in a number field. I don't know. There's a number of different reasons why you can use stuff like this. But once again, if you can achieve some of this stuff with model binding, you can. This one specifically, you can't really, because it's talking about, doing stuff to the screen. But anyway, moving on. We've got a few more to go. It's a long video, I understand, but it's quite important that you guys get an understanding of all of these, because eventually you might want to use them in your applications. And observables and RxJS are very powerful and very, very good. So moving on. The next one we're going to look at, I'm going to write the markup for it straight away, is from promise. Now, in previous videos, we've gone from observable to promises, right? But we've never gone the other way around. And that's because the HTTP client inside of Angular 2 is built on the concept of the observables, right? But there could be a library that you use out there that returns a promise, okay? Like well, at least a type of promise that fits into the promise model for Angular 2, which, I think it's pretty much as long as it has a then and a catch, it fits as a promise. I can't know that for sure. Well, anyway, I'm not too sure about that anyway. But it's definitely a promise, okay? So, coming over here, I'm just going to add in here from promise, string equals blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm going to be a bit lazy here and cheat. So, I'm going to go var obs from promise equals observable dot from promise. And I'm just going to pass in, oh, hang on, I have to import it first. I always forget to do this. So come up. And yes, it gets, at some point, it seems to be a lot of extensions that you add. But keeping in mind, I'm showing them all one by one. You may not use half of these in your application. So you'll just have a few here. So from promise, and this basically is looking for a promise object of type T. And I'm going to come in and go, what does it want specifically? A promise straight away. I'll go new, or no, I'll go promise dot resolve We'll just pass the number 1 or something. Okay. So as a result of this, this now should be an observable number. It is. And now we'll come down and we will subscribe to it. Same as we do with other stuff. We'll go the 4 one here now. And we'll go from promise. And we know it's a 1. So from promise. It's not obs from promise. From promise property. That's what I'm after. Okay. And then from promise property, which we already have in our logic, we come down and we can see that number 1 was returned. Okay. Now, if I come over and decide that instead of promise.resolve, where is it? Subscribe from event. That's the subscriptions. Yeah, so if I now come in here and go promise.reject, like that, and go you failed, like that, we'll probably get nothing because we didn't resolve the value. If I come and refresh, in fact, from promise is still returning 1. I'm not sure why that's happening. It should return you failed. Well, actually, it wouldn't return anything at all, I would have thought. It definitely wouldn't return 1. So refresh. Still returning 1. Oh, hang on. We got a compile error, that's why. ToString does not exist on type never. What have I done here? Where is never? Okay. What else is in the? Is there anything in the console? Right. So because I'm calling ToString, so observable never. Obs from promise, observable never. Because I'm rejecting. I think that's why. So I now come up here and I save. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a new lesson that I've just learned. If I go promise.reject, what this returns is it returns an observable of never, which observable of never is saying this will never ever invoke a positive outcome. Okay, and I haven't got to never yet. That was actually something I was not going to bother looking at, because all it is saying, you know, we're never going to evaluate to anything. Okay, so that's what it's complaining about here. It's because I rejected it. It's saying no. Well, then we can never succeed. So it returns a never observable, which does not have a ToString method on it, and that's kind of what happened there. So now we, as I said, we get the promise, we get the 1, okay, because we resolved it as 1. We can resolve it to whatever. It's just a promise. In fact, I've got you failed, so it should have come up with you failed. I'm not sure why it still says 1. Oh, because I still had the error there. That's why. Now it says you failed. Okay, so I'll put this back to 1. Just keep things looking better. So next, so from promise, I'm just trying to think which ones are left. Zip, yeah. So zip is an interesting one. What zip does is it allows you to, what's the term? It allows you to take two or more observables with data in it, and basically it's called zipping them together. And this is where you get the value from one from the value of two, and so on and so forth. So if I come up here and say I want to include ID1 and associate that to Daryl, and then ID2 I want to associate to John, and ID3 I want to associate to Duck Manton, this is what the zip can do for us. So this says there's a bunch of primary key IDs, and these happen to be first names that are in the same order as the IDs up here. We can join them together, okay? And and you can actually zip them in two different ways. You can actually, if you do the default zip, it will basically put it as an associative array. Or if you don't do that, you can actually create your own mapping or your own way of mapping the information, and you can spit that out. And basically I'm going to show both those right now. So under the promise, we'll go, before we go under the promise, I'm going to do this ahead of time. I'm going to grab the zip right now. Zip. Cool. Just makes things easier. So var, we've got obs zip, and we'll say formatted first. And this is the one where I'll show you how to change the structure of the two numbers. It's going to look a little weird when you first see it. So if I go observable.zip, and what I'm going to pass in is the first observable up here, and then the third. So we go obs1, obs3. Alright, so far it looks like it might be doing a merge. Alright, it's merging the information together, and that's not strictly true. What this will do is it'll grab the first value that's in the first array and associate it with the first value that's in the third array and put them together in an array, or for which the one I'm going to do now, I'm going to specify how they should look in the array. You know, how are they combined, or how is it known, right? We can actually map out what we want to come back from this observable as an individual stream value. So for this example, I'm going to specify a number and a string. So we're going to go ID and specify this as a number, right? And then I want to have a name, which I want as a string. So what this is saying is this is the kind of this is the kind of parameters that we have coming in. So the ID is a number that represents the numbers in the first observable up here, which is 1, 2, 3, and the name is the string that's associated with observable 3. So basically, it'll pluck each one from each. So from position 0, it'll grab 1 here and put it in here, and it'll grab Daryl and put it in here, and then once we've done all that, we're going to map this information. And how we kind of map this information is we can put it inside of parentheses, and then you can just go ID and name, right? Because this is basically saying now we're going to have an object. It's going to have an ID property set to the value of this, and then we're going to have a name property that's set to the value of name. It's a little weird. It takes a little bit to understand, but hopefully if you do this a number of times, you will actually understand what I'm talking about. And now I'll come down and I will subscribe to this. So underneath here, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to subscribe value. Right, so basically we're going to grab what's up the top here without actually using the same properties. Zip. And I'm going to call this zip with format property, like that. Like so. We're passing in value. Value will not be no longer toString. We're going to grab JSON.stringify. Because remember, we just converted this to like an object structure. So now I want to see what that structure looks like. If we just spat out value straight away, it would just go in the screen. It would probably just say like object : object. Now I don't know if people have seen that before in JavaScript, but sometimes when you print out an object and you call toString on it, it just says object, which isn't helpful. So I'm stringifying it to JSON and then putting the value out. So let's go and create this property quickly. Paste string equals blah. Save. Right, so hopefully if I come in here now and I create another one of these, come down, I'll grab that. And we'll go zip method with formatting. And if I save this, hopefully I did it right. And you can see the ID from 1, so this is from the first observable. It's mixed up with the name of the second observable, and then 2, and then the next, and then 3, and then the next. Okay, so that's basically just setting up 3 different objects from 2 arrays that happen to be associated with each other. So this is kind of how you can take multiple arrays and say, you know what, I want an array of objects, or a stream of objects that I want to process based on these 3 arrays I have. It'd be kind of clever to do this kind of things. Now the default is actually an array, so I'll just quickly show that. Once again, I'll just come here, and this will be the last one for this video. As I said, there's a few more, but they just weren't overly important to me, so I left them out. You can look them up yourself if you feel like you want to be fully complete, but considering how long this video has been going for already, I don't want to continue to go because people won't watch to the very end. And that's if they watch now to the very end. So this is not much different to the one we've already created. The only difference is that we're not going to include the mapping at the end. So if I grab this, we'll go obzip without formatting equals this, and we just won't include this last part, like so. And then finally down here, we go obzip without format. Yep, that one. Dot subscribe. In fact, I should just paste the name of the property down here and just copy the following line, or the previous line. And then go without. Right, and then we just grab this, like so. And hopefully, if I added this to the front end, I have. By rights, this should now work as well. And you can see it's an associative array we're taking the value ID1 from the first array and put it in at the first position here, and then it's created my name next to it, then 2, then John, then 3, then document. So that might be handy from time to time as well, that kind of format. So I thought I'd show you, but I think the top one here is the one you're more likely to do. But it's there just so you can use it. So that's where I'm going to end it, guys. It's getting late now and I need to edit this video. Thank you everyone for listening. And in the next video, we're going to look more at the methods on a observable, not static, but once we've got the observable, what we can do with it. And we can do things like we can filter out certain values. We can, if it's highly complicated set of stream, we can break it up. We can merge, not merge as in merge the one that we looked at, but we can put some data together. And there's lots of methods out there that allow you to manipulate a stream after you've produced it. Up to this point, we've just looked at producers. So even though some of these look like they're already produced, for example, this Fromm, right, and the obs, right, you'd say, well, these have already been produced. Well, technically, nothing is produced until you go subscribe, okay? But these are actually all referred to as producers because they start the initial stream going before you can manipulate that stream. So I'm going to end it there, guys, and the next one we're going to talk about manipulating streams with observables and RxJS. And then following that, I don't know if the next video will go over 2 videos, I probably will, but following that we will look at how to implement our own classes of these things, because so far we've basically just gone blah.subscribe, and this might be great most of the time, but there could be times where you want to share a way that we subscribe to something, and based on what it is, we can subscribe to things different ways and do different things. Like one could be for logging, one could be send analytics somewhere. All these different scenarios you can use for subscribers. Subscribers isn't always just one thing that you can do on something. It can be something that you do across your whole application, such as sending notifications potentially as well. Maybe there's an error in the application and you want to try and, as a backup, send a AJAX call to an API that sends an alert to maybe a developer like myself, right? Saying, hey, look, this broke. And so instead of us being informed by people running the website, we may get in our feed say, look, something broke on the website, straight away into our email. Those are the kinds of things you could think about. We might look at how we can generate an observable and how to call methods on a subscriber, or basically on the passed in subscriber, like next and error and close. We'll look at all those different ways of doing things just to make you complete, and then we'll move on from RxJS. Okay, we'll move on to something that's kind of more around the scope of Angular once again. Not sure what that is at this stage. It could be we might move on to directives, and then potentially pipes, and then I want to do a little bit on animation and a few other bits and pieces, extra couple of sessions on routing, and then basically maybe start trying to give you guys some really fully fledged features that you could build with nice animation and sliding and all that cool stuff that we haven't seen so far. Oh, and unit testing. Unit testing, definitely. I have to go through that with you guys as well. And finally, potentially deployment. Because at this stage, we have been just working in Angular CLI and nothing else. So that's it, guys. I'm going to end the lesson here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.